Ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. Start the show. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome into another episode of the Triple Play Fantasy Baseball Show, a proud member of Underdog and the Underdog Fantasy family. Reminder, if you guys use code TRIPLE at checkout with Underdog Fantasy and you're making your first time deposit, use code TRIPLE and it will double or match your first deposit up to $100. Again, use code TRIPLE for Underdog Fantasy. And if you guys don't know what best ball is, check out our Underdog drafts that go out on the YouTube channel every single Saturday, and you can get a taste of just how fun Underdog Fantasy can be. Tonight, we are closing our position previews, and I couldn't think of a better way than to do that with our special guest tonight. But before we get to him, the rest of the crew, you guys know, Marty Party, Doc, and Little Cheesecake. Marty Party, we just did a three-man draft on Underdog. I don't think I've ever had that good of a feeling about a stacked team. Do you think we have it all? Because I feel like we have Fernando Tatis, we have Jacob deGrom. I think we're first place, right?
I think so, but what to me was the most impressive is that Doc found a way to hate almost every one of our picks in a 3-team draft.
We started out so strong, and then David's like, yeah, let's do high upside. Let's take innings limit deGrom. Let's take suspended Tatis in a 3-person league.
Yeah, but you're at worst, you're in third place, and you shoot for first place. We're not settling for second. We're either first or last in that league.
We're definitely last.
Little Cheesecake got his new decor in the background, his framed jersey now, building up his shrine behind him. Is that one of many coming, or is that going to be the one and only thing you're hanging up?
I have a bunch of baseball books, so I'm going to eventually get a bookcase and look all smart and stuff. But this is the start of it.
I like it. You're better than me and Marty. We just have blank white walls. Doc doesn't have much either. But our guest probably has the best decor of it all if you're watching on the YouTube channel. We welcome in a man that's after my own heart, as we both share the passionate career of being a PE teacher. But that's where the similarities end, because he's much smarter than I am. He's also a closer expert for the Athletic, where he's helped you win all your fantasy leagues with his top-notch relief pitcher knowledge. And if you want to check out all his great relief pitching work, you guys can check out Reliever Recon, which might be one of the, I'll say, most popular names of a Patreon out in the fantasy baseball space. I think any fantasy baseball analyst knows what Reliever Recon is. It's an incredible resource, and you guys need to make sure you check that out. It is the one and only Greg Jewett. How's it going, man?
Well, thank you for that lead in, and I appreciate it. I enjoy joining you guys, and yeah, I'm trying to build up the wall too. I actually just behind me, there's a Walter White bobblehead I just got, so that was a nice addition. Yeah. So we'll build it up. Someday I'll have a cool looking background. A lot of these fantasy analysts have these like great things behind them, and I'm like, okay, I got to do something.
Yeah, Walter White bobblehead, man, that's a great idea.
Oh yeah, I'll grab them in a little bit when I'm not talking.
I love it. Well, you guys know we have Greg on for one specific reason: the best in the business, talking relief pitchers. That is our show tonight. And look, I think you watch a lot of different shows. Last year we did a relief pitcher draft. We're trying to kind of come at this at a little bit of a different angle. And instead of just literally having Greg talk for 50 minutes straight, I don't think he wants to do that. I don't know if everybody just wants to hear the same voice for 50 minutes. So we thought we would take the 15 bullpens that seem to have the most question marks in the league right now. Obviously, if you have Emmanuel Clase, you know he's getting the saves for the Guardians. If you have Josh Hader, you know he's going to get the saves for the Padres. We're looking at the bullpens right now that have the biggest question marks, and we're all going to take our shot at thinking who's going to be the number one in saves by the season's end in each of these bullpens. So let's kick it off, and let's go to this first bullpen, Greg, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. We're going to probably the most complicated one to start. At least that's what it looks like to me. Just looking at just kind of the options for them right now. There's not, to me, just when I look at their depth chart, one that stands out to me in terms of that would be my gut feeling. I'm interested to hear you. I mean, Kevin Ginkel, Andrew Chafin is there, Miguel Castro, and Scott McHugh is, I think, a name I've been hearing a lot more. Scott McGough, excuse me. Who, if you had to say today, do you think gets the most saves in that bullpen?
Today I'll go McGough, but I think it's close between him and Castro. I know people have been talking about Ginkel, but if they wanted Ginkel, why would they go out and add 3 relievers in the offseason? I just, if you knew you had him and he's cheap, then you would have just kept on rolling with it. So with Melanson being shut down with shoulder fatigue, I don't know if that was Diamondback ease for he's been awful all spring, so we're going to shut him down. But that's how I thought Castro probably has the best stuff, but every once in a while his control gets wonky, as it did his last outing in spring. I think he had 17 pitches with like 6 or 7 strikes in that outing. He only gave up like a walk, but you can see where an outing like that can go sideways. McGough, he's got the 95-mile-per-hour fastball. He's got the splitter. He'll produce ground outs, and he's probably the safest play. And then they'll use Chafin sometimes with left-handed pockets of the lineup, which will be a common theme tonight. You're going to hear lineup pockets very often when you're talking about these 15 messy bullpens.
Yeah, you're talking about just the how fast that McGough throws. He's looked pretty impressive in spring training. He had fired 5 2/3 scoreless, hitless innings during early part of spring training here, and he looks to be like he has some really good stuff. Now, I got to ask you, Greg, do you think, looking at Andrew Chafin as being the only lefty in this quote-unquote closer committee, that he's probably going to be the guy that they would turn to if it's a heavy left-handed part of the lineup coming in the 9th?
I think so. Mantiply had a nice little run last year, but it seems like regression's coming at him in full force. I mean, I know it's only spring training, but he hasn't been very sharp. And again, if they trusted Ginkel and Mantiply, then why do you bring in Chafin, McGough, and Castro? I mean, that's just from the outside looking in. And Lavulo's been saying, he prefers having one person, but he's like, this year at the beginning, I might have to change my approach. But he can change that on opening day. We just don't know what his tendency or main choice is going to be. But I figure it's probably going to be one of those 2 righties.
Does anybody disagree with Greg? Because I think I'm on board with this one. I think this is such a confusing bullpen that I didn't have strong feelings one way or another towards a different player. Are we all team Scott McGough if pretty much we had to pick one?
Well, I want to ask Greg, like, are you completely avoiding this situation? Or have you drafted any Diamondbacks at all? Okay, no. I think that's important to know too. Like, just like, hey,
none of those guys in Tout Wars went in our 12-team auction, not even in reserves.
Wow.
When's the last time the Diamondbacks had a young closer? I feel like they've been relying on veteran arms for years.
Yeah, it's almost been like the Hazen way. He just brings in an older guy, and they just keep burning and churning through them. They've had a hard time getting consistency in the high leverage. And what they spoke of in the offseason in the early articles was they wanted to add guys with velocity and swing and miss stuff. So all of those things baked together is how I landed on Castro or McGough getting a shot at least the primary save share. I mean, I think what the best you're hoping for there is somebody that's in like a 65-35 split, or however you want to divvy it up.
Let's talk about a different bullpen then. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers. And you have Brusdar Graterol there. And Evan Phillips was somebody I thought was going to be the guy. You look at his StatCast page, and it's blinding you with how much red there is. And just the overall numbers last year, 1.14 ERA, 77 strikeouts in 63 innings. The expected stats still elite, striking out over 33% of batters he was facing. I was very shocked to see that the Dodgers don't seem to have him be the guy. And I know, again, maybe it comes down to a money thing and having to pay him closer type money, but if you look on Fangraphs, they have 4 guys under the closer committee: Caleb Ferguson, Brusdar Graterol, Alexis Faccia, and Evan Phillips. Greg, do you think when it's all said and done, Evan Phillips becomes the guy, or do you think this is legit like 4 different guys could have 10 saves?
I don't think 4 will get 10 just because it's hard to disperse that many.
Yeah.
But they are very another term we use on the athletic and reliever econ is what we call the highest leverage reliever. We shorten it down to an HLR. And that's basically he's coming in at the biggest moment of the game, whether it's the 7th inning with 2 guys on, the 8th inning against the 4, 5, 6 hitters, whatever it is that's going to help the team win. So there's a minute stat when you look into the win probability. There's a little tab on Fangraphs that I use very often, but most people probably ignore. There's a stat called win probability added, and then there's shutdowns and meltdowns. And this all came about with Ryan Thompson. He went through a big tirade on Twitter about the arbitration process. And he was like, the team was using meltdowns against me. He's like, what the hell's a meltdown? So of course I already had that screenshotted on my computer. I answered him underneath it, but I never heard back from Ryan. But if he needs representation in the future, I think I can get hired. I'd be happy to represent any reliever in an arbitration case. But with all that being said, Phillips is just so good that the Dodgers are going to do it that way. And if you guys remember in the playoffs, there was a game they were saving Phillips for the 9th inning against the Padres. And then the guys getting him to the 9th inning blew the game. And I think that resonates with Roberts and the staff. And I think they're resigned to the fact that, he will get saves, but he's not going to be the guy in what we view as a traditional closer. And then you've got all the dominoes. Okay. So I know Graterol is receiving a lot of helium lately because he was mentioned in an article by Juan Toribio on MLB.com as having possibly the inside track at the closer job at the beginning of the season. But then you've got Hudson, of course, with his knee stuff, it hasn't been very positive lately. He's saying he needs like 2-3 days off in between from throwing, which is not encouraging. And then you've got Alex Reyes waiting in the wings if he can ever come back. But those are that's a lot of ifs and buts and maybes. And you can't pin it on that. So I know Joel Pinheiro, we had him on the show last year in the preseason, and he raved about Graterol. He likes his stuff. Now, again, all of us want to see more swing and miss out of him, but he has the velocity. Will he use his other pitches more to get swinging strikes? And then maybe we'll get more of like a traditional closer feel from him. I guess it boils down to, can Graterol start strong and stay healthy? If he puts those 2 things together, you could have a perfect storm, but it's not anything I'm going to set my watch to. However, at his current price point, you could do worse things than having a guy that's at least a save share on the Dodgers if it's not Phillips, because he's probably going 50 to 75 picks later.
Well, right now,
I wanted to add, I just wanted to add about Brusdar Graterol. 2 days ago in the LA Times, the Dodgers came out saying they really want him to be more consistent against left-handed hitting. So it does appear, at least at this point, if there's lefties coming up, he's not going to get those opportunities in the 9th. So that's one thing that I think is a check in the negative column for Graterol.
Yep, and that's just like, the Giants bringing in Rodgers to help Duvall with lefties. It's just where the game's going. It's so hard to find somebody that can neutralize both sides of the plate and do the things that the traditional closers do.
So what I'll say is interesting is the last 4 seasons, the Dodgers closer, whoever it's been, Kenley Jansen or Craig Kimbrell, have had at least 76% of the saves. So it seems like they are going to roll with one guy. And Graterol did have more saves for than Evan Phillips did last year. But Evan Phillips pitched 14 more innings, and the 49.2 was a career high for Graterol. And I know with a flamethrower, sometimes you worry about injury more than the others. My gut just says Evan Phillips for that reason, that they'll do whatever they can to get to the 9th inning. And
here's their ADP over the last week for main events. Just if you guys curious, over the last week for main events, Evan Phillips is going at pick 203, and Brusdar Graterol is going at pick 348. So that's it was interesting. At least main events for people are paying $1,700. Greg, you said you were doing a main event draft too, right? So
Well,
you did
I
Tout
mean,
Wars
the
over
cat's out of the
weekend.
bag on that one. Curlin put it out on
I
Twitter,
saw it. Yeah,
so
that's where my mind went.
I did DM him. I'm like, I didn't need the world to know I'm doing a main event, but it's okay. So I'm over it now. But yes, Saturday at 4 p.m. I'll be drafting right where you're looking at me here, and probably swearing and doing other things all throughout the draft. But yeah, I did one main event qualifier last year, and I was fortunate enough to win it. So
Hey, there we go.
so I'm only paying 125 to be in my main event, but that was hard work. But that's and I was I'm not trying to like humble brag or anything, but like Sport and I were walking back to the hotel after the Saturday night party at Tout Wars, and we were talking about it. He's like, yeah, he goes, I know I should do more MEQs, but I don't know. I was like, I go, if you went to the casino and say, like, when my girlfriend goes to the casino, she brings $100 cash. If she loses the $100, then she walks away. I was like, an MEQ is $125. Okay. So, I mean, okay, only one person can win your league, but at the same token, if you do win your league, I mean, that's an $1,800 lottery ticket that you can turn into hopefully more money. I'm not saying I'm going to, but at least I have the opportunity to turn 125 into first, second, or third, and that's the thought process. So that's, it was work, but I'm really streamlining this year. I'm doing less drafts overall, and I'm doing the main event. I'm doing 2 MEQs. I got the TGFBI, and I might do like a satellite or two, but I'm not spreading myself thin. You got to focus on these things. And between Tout and the other stuff. So it's like Sunday nights, like all fab. So I don't want to be putting out 100 fires. I want to be focused on those couple of things and try and do my best.
Man, I'm so pumped for you, man. I've never done the main event, but I just know obviously how competitive it is. And it's crazy because I know ADP goes out the window, and I know any type of competitive leagues, usually that's the case, but that's just an example where you literally can't think, oh, I could draft this guy in 4 rounds. He'll be there. It's like you have to get them then. I love hearing where guys go in main events just to make sure that people can get their guys. So I will love to hear, I'll probably DM you sometime after the main event's over and just hear just how it was for you and just your thoughts about it. But that's awesome. I'm really excited for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, back to the bullpen discussion. Bringing up that main event ADP, Evan Phillips is going a lot higher. So it seems like that the people, at least that are doing the main events, think Evan Phillips is significantly someone they're going to invest in more than Brusdar Graterol. At least that's what it's saying with that ADP. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I don't want to spend all night on the Dodgers.
Let's talk about the next bullpen here, and that Chicago Cubs. LC, I'm going to start with you first because this is your team. And if you had to lean one direction in this bullpen for this team, I've been seeing Michael Fulmer as the favorite in a couple of places. Once Brandon Hughes I feel like a while ago, he was the guy. If you had to say today who you think the closer is for the Chicago Cubs, who is it?
I don't think it's Hughes. He's the only lefty in the pen. I think it's going to be Fulmer, but I think they're trying to fatten him up for a trade. So I don't know necessarily if he's going to lead the team by the end of the season.
Did you mean to use that language?
Yeah, I've never heard
him up for a trade.
Did you mean to use that language for someone that's overweight?
That was.
I was thinking. What? I was thinking about a pig you bring to market when they're fat.
You're calling Michael Fulmer a pig?
He's 6'3", 224.
Listen, I'm not going to fat shame anybody. I think Fulmer's a good-looking dude. I'm upset he hit my catcher in the face the other day. But other than that, I got Nola on a team or two. That wasn't cool. But other than that, I think he's just fine. His wife, I'm sure, loves him, or his girlfriend, or whoever his partner is. Good-looking dude.
And so, no Brad Boxberger for you.
I have taken a few Brad Boxberger shares, but I think as it has developed, he's behind him in the pecking order as far as I'm concerned.
No Boxberger for you. Okay, fair enough. I got to ask Greg before we go to you here. Adbert Alzolay was somebody that I was speculating could be the closer for this team because his stuff is insane. I don't think he can make it as a starter because he's just too injury prone. But the stuff is ridiculous. Do you just see him becoming more of like what Josh Hader was before he was the closer Josh Hader, and like when he used to set up and go like 1.2 innings from the 7th and 8th. Is that the Alzolay role? And then you see it being Fulmer, like LC was saying?
Yeah, they were very cryptic in the early parts of spring training about what his role was going to be. It started out, well, I could see him in leverage situations. I literally asked the beat writer in one of the things on The Athletic. And then as the time went by, and once they added Fulmer, it kind of shifted things. And I agree that, Fulmer might be to the Cubs what David Robertson was in the first half last year, where he's the primary save share. And then if the Cubs are not in contention, they're going to flip him because it's a 1-year deal for $4 million, which makes him very tradable. I mean, that's not anything you can ignore. So in a draft and hold, it makes Fulmer a little less alluring, but for the upcoming drafts, it's a redraft league. I would also be, on Recon, I wrote about 2 weeks ago that I was getting Daniel Bard 2022 vibes from Michael Fulmer. I just feel like he's doing very well in spring. He's tweaked his arsenal. He's joined the sweeper revolution. And he's thrown, I believe, I'm going to jinx him. I think he's been no earned runs yet this spring. And he just looks confident. And it's not too long ago we were drafting him over Gregory Soto in Detroit's bullpen. That was 2 seasons ago. So, I think it's going to be one of those things where it's just like a rodeo. You take him, you get as many saves as you can. And then if he gets dealt to a contender in July or August and he's no longer closing, then you just move on and go to the next bowl.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point too, talking about that in draft and holds. Fulmer probably is going to get dealt at the deadline if he's any good, and he'll become a setup guy or just a regular guy in the bullpen probably for a team at that point. So
it would be like deja vu if he gets dealt to the Mets, where he started his career. And he does the same exact thing as Robertson. I'm not calling it, but it makes a lot. It checks a lot of checks a lot of the boxes if that was the move.
Okay, I like it. I want to skip one here, or skip a couple, and I want to go to the Detroit Tigers for a second because Marty's a Detroit Tigers fan. I know you, Marty. You've been trying to be plugged in to this team, and it seemed like Alex Lang was the guy for much of the kind of going into spring training. Just talk about how he had probably the best stuff in the bullpen, but he is struggled. And there's Jason Foley there. Jose Cisnero is the name that I've been hearing a little bit more recently. If you had to pick a Tigers closer today to lead the team in saves, is he still Lang for you, or is it somebody else?
It is Lang. But his ADP skyrocketing was just the industry doing it, because anytime, because over the winter meetings, when you talk to the brass, they said they're going to try out everybody. No one has a hold of the closing position. But because Lang was so good last year, it's just assumed that he's going to get it. He as of now, he's their closer. And what that means is he's probably going to look around 15 saves if he stays in there. But I'm afraid of like his spring training, 5.40 ERA, 6 strikeouts to 7 walks. I mean, that's just it. It literally could not get any worse than that. It's the last thing you want to see. So my confidence is low, as you know, in Lang, but he is still the guy until he's not. The guy behind him is Jose Cisnero. And Lang has way better stuff. He just does. And if he blows it, then it's going to go to Cisnero, but it's his until it's not.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now, Greg, is that the same as you feel with Lang being the guy at the end of the day? Is he going to lead the team in saves?
Probably. However, I'm going to go off the reservation here, so I'm either going to shock Marty or whatever. But speaking of picking up thing, I don't know if it can last, but Trey Winchester has looked fantastic. Now you want to flip the script on what Lang's doing this spring. Winchester has an 11-2 K to BB. He's hitting 95 on the radar. So he's shown no velocity loss coming back from. Now again, this is a guy with a very checkered injury past. He also has command issues of his own at times, so he loses the strike zone. But again, we're
he hasn't given up a run.
Lang's outing today, he did not give up a run, but he threw 17 pitches, 7 were strikes. 7.
No, I was talking about the other guy. He has not given up a run in those 7 innings.
Oh no, I know Wingenter hasn't,
Yeah.
and you know it's even funny too because Frank Stanfield was DMing me the other day about Miguel Diaz. He's actually looked very good as well. You know, I think Cisnero. I'm sure Marty can attest to this. I don't trust Jose Cisnero in a save situation. Jason Foley's far too hittable. You know, that happened again today. Both of them got roughed up in their outings, and again, spring training is not going to, you know, be our marker for what's going to happen all season long. But in spring, I'm looking at whip and I'm looking at K to BB. Those are, and velocity and whatever. That's what I'm focused on. Are they throwing strikes? Are they limiting walks? And are they keeping people off the bases? That's what I'm trying to monitor. And Diaz and Wingenter for me have been checking those boxes. So I would not be averse if I end up punting saves like I did in the TGFBI, taking Wingenter in the 29th or 30th round on Saturday.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that name, but that's something to keep an eye on, I guess. There. Do you think Alex Lang starts the year out as the first game, scores 3-2 in the 9th inning? Lang is out there.
I think so now. And again, Marty can attest to this, but AJ Hinch has been very calculated. Just like they never said Soto was a closer till a year later. I don't think he wanted Lang to come into camp with the pressure of I got to be the closer, and I think he kind of tried to insulate him and say, you know, we have more than one way to get through the 9th inning. I think those are the quotes that Marty was intimating about. And, you know, they've been very coy, and again, it makes total sense. But at the same token, AJ Hinch is watching the same the same results that I'm seeing. And he's going, okay, I'll give Lang a couple of shots early, but I might give Wingenter a couple of shots early too. And if Wingenter converts them and Lang does not, then the fantasy community could be very upset.
All right, that's the Detroit Tigers. Let's go to the next team on the list here, that being the Miami Marlins. And this bullpen, I think we thought we knew it, and then they made a bunch of moves, and now we have no idea. Dylan Floro, Tanner Scott, Matt Barnes, AJ Puck. I feel like you could tell me any of these 4 guys would be the closer, and I'd be like, oh, makes sense to me. AJ Puck, maybe he's a multi-inning, the 1 to 2 inning guy versus the best part of the lineup. Matt Barnes coming in there, especially how he finished the year last year, looked really good. Greg, I got to go to you. This is one of the more confusing ones to me here. If you had to pick one, who is it?
Well, I'm going to further confuse you. So in quotes the other day, they said they were going to look at a couple of relievers as what they're calling an inning plus. So this might be something new I have to add to the closer charts at Recon. Inning plus. I do kind of like the way he said it. It's interesting. But he mentioned Floro, Brazoban, and Scott as the guys he wants to be inning plus relievers. Whereas LC comes in and faces a guy in the 7th, and then he does the 8th inning, and then I can bring in whoever matches up best in the 9th. So the team really, when I was talking with Craig Michelot last year, he said the team felt that Floro was one of their best options when there's guys on base because he can get ground balls and get double plays. So like if there's guys on first and second, they can bring him in those situations and get out of the inning. So I think you'll see probably Barnes and Puck. Now, if I'm going on skill and in TGFBI, I don't know if it was just because of me in the draft room or whatever. I would like to think that's not the case, but relievers got pushed up major in my TGFBI. So I just let them drift. And I ended up, I took Puck, I think, in the 24th round. So I ended up with Fulmer, Puck, Will Smith, and my last pick was Ben Joyce. But, if he doesn't make the opening day roster, I can just flip him and move on to somebody else. So I'm not scared to chase saves, but other people don't want to deal with all that rigmarole. But when we were talking off air before we started, I said I did a whole aggregated projection sheet, taking the stuff on Fangraphs and putting them in a blender and coming out with the four different sites, the projection systems. Puck ended up being like in the top 20 on skills from the 4 when I put them all together. And it was weird because I left one, I have 4 tabs on the site that people can access, but the first tab is just skills. And with the injury, who's number 1? Who do you guys think is number 1? Just based on skills, there's no wins or saves attached. It's just strikeouts, hits. It's basically
Barnes.
It's strikeouts, innings pitched, hits allowed, walks allowed.
Just for the Marlins or in general?
And then SGP. No, all overall.
Like, is it just relief pitchers or
just relief pitchers? Yeah.
Brian Abreu.
Hader.
No.
Devin Williams.
Nope. We got one more shot.
Munoz.
Munoz is it.
Oh,
Munoz
good job, Marty.
First, when there's no
bang.
When there's no wins or saves attached, when I left those two columns empty, he was at the top of the list in SGP.
Well, I remember at FPAS, Doug Dennis did his love letter to him where he talked about him for about 5 straight minutes. He got a little heated. I think he was sweating.
Yeah, I teased him on a different show. I said, Doug, does Munoz have a order of protection? You're not allowed within like 500 feet of him, or what?
He would if he would have saw the what I saw.
Yeah,
I was nervous.
Doug's not allowed in Seattle.
Oh, that's great. So I mean, this bullpen is still a lot of questions to it.
So again, a gun to my head, I'm going to say Puck, and I'll say he'll get 14.
Okay,
but it's not
I
like
feel like it has to be Puck, right? Like Dylan Floro has looked awful spring training. He's 32.
They brought Matt Barnes over. Matt Barnes is a closer.
Remind me later if I find it. I have a chart that shows Matt Barnes's results before sticky substance checks and Matt Barnes's results after, and it's two different pictures.
Matt Barnes couldn't even hold that closer job in the Red Sox organization prior. Brandon Workman took it from him.
Oh, that's a name. Where did Brandon Workman go?
He's out of baseball. It's in Japan or Korea right now, something like that.
He was literally like, was it 2 years ago? He was like a legit closer option.
I think it was further ago, but yeah, it's such a hard position. Guys' careers rise and fall, flame out. It's amazing and you get guys coming back out of nowhere. I mean, remember Daniel Bard, he had the yips, and then all of a sudden he put together the season of his life. But on the same token, I don't know if we're going to talk about them, but I will have 0. Last year, I was telling everybody to get Bard. This year, I'm going to have 0 shares.
He looks awful.
He doesn't know where the ball's going right now. And it's a shame because it was a great story. And I think he's probably a really good guy, but nothing personal. But
I listened to that episode on The Athletic because I remember hearing your reasoning. I don't remember the top of my head what exactly it was at this moment, but I remember when I was golfing, I was listening to it. And I was like, it makes so much sense.
His velo's down. And then he said in an interview before his first outing with the pitch clock, he was like, oh, we didn't know the rules, so I didn't get a full warm up. That's my velocity. It was down, but the next outing was down. But he said, he was like, pitching with the pitch clock is like a cardio workout. And I was like, what's it going to be like when it's July in Colorado?
Yeah.
If it's a cardio workout in 60-degree weather in spring in Arizona, it ain't going to be pretty when it's hot in Colorado.
Now, Greg, this doesn't necessarily relate 100%. We're talking about Colorado relievers. Where were you when Wade Davis had 2 of the worst back-to-back outings for a closer that I've ever seen and literally cost people the season?
Oh, I remember those.
Gosh, you won't let that go.
Golly, you're not going to ever let that go, David.
But he wasn't the one to ask to stay out there. His manager left them hung out there dry.
Because I think
they did the Hader last year. That almost busted one of my. I had him active that week in my main event qualifier, and I was like 6 earned runs. Oh my good God! Luckily, my team held on and recovered. But I was like, yeah, that was my heart fell in my stomach when I saw that stat line coming across. I was like, oh dear Lord.
Were there any worse closer blowups than those ones? I'm trying to think if they were like a stretch where you're just
I feel like Carlos Estevez had an awful game at one point or
another.
Game
is one.
I think I had him active in TGFBI during that. Yeah.
Chapman had a really bad blow up.
And then
Chapman had a really bad blow up a couple of years ago where he gave up
2021.
He had a weekend against
those 6 weeks.
Yeah, he had a weekend against the Mets where he blew 2 games in 3 days.
Yeah.
That cost me a match with Ariel Cohen, by the way.
Didn't he have back-to-back wild pitches that game or something?
Oh yeah, one of them he had no idea where he and people are we're puffing their chest out going, Chapman's going to be the closer in Kansas City. It's like, I don't trust that guy.
I feel like Bobby Jenks even had a stretch towards the end of his career where I remember him just being just his name is why he still was closing games, but he was just completely awful.
I feel like same with Jose Valverde.
Ooh, Big Papi.
I could talk closer names all day. I love reeling these guys. But we'll go to the next team here. The next one that we'll talk about is the New York Mets. And this one would have not been on the list, but Edwin Diaz, unfortunately, will probably miss the entire season. So we have pretty much 2 guys we're looking at unless knowing like how fantasy baseball works, they'll end up being a random third guy that ends up making himself pop here. But
David Bednar on a trade.
It could be. It could be. But David Robertson or Adam Ottavino, as it stands today, seem to be the two fighting for it. I've literally heard half the people say Ottavino. I've heard half the people say Robertson. Greg, as it stands today, do you lean one way or the other?
The recon staff is very split on this because two of them are Mets fans. However, I lean Robertson solely because, we were quoting the stats about Gradwell earlier. Adam Ottavino last year had a WOBA, I think, of like 360 against lefties. So, I mean, if he's facing Acuna and righties from Atlanta, he's fine. But if you get into a situation where two left-handers are in the ninth inning, you're going to see Robertson out there. So I projected it on Recon when it happened as a 65-35 split favoring Robertson. And I think once in a while, Brooks Raley will get in there and get one, or Drew Smith will get a couple when those guys need a day off. They're going to stick with the stuff. And plus Robertson has closed for the Yankees before. He's used to New York. We saw Ottavino struggle sometimes when he was kind of the focal point of the Yankees. I think they would rather manage Ottavino with clean innings and mostly right-handed batters as opposed to just saying you're our guy in the ninth inning, if that makes sense.
A little note of that too. Ottavino has at least 15 holds in his last 5 full seasons. So he's probably more comfortable being the setup guy, but I feel like they have to trade for someone. They're both 37.
Yeah. They're no spring chickens. And we all know you're going to need a live arm when you get into those postseason moments. Yeah. I have a hard, and again, I love Pags, but he thought I was nuts when I was like, they should go trade for Barlow right now. Yeah. Scott Barlow. Kansas City has a pile of relievers. They're going to have to make a deal or two here. Amir Garrett's looked good this spring. They've got Josh Taylor. They've got Chapman. They got 3 lefties. How many teams could use a lefty right now? A bunch. They're probably going to have to send Dylan Coleman to the minors because they got to see what Stallmont has left. And they got Carlos Hernandez. And they've got Taylor Clark. They do have a spoil of riches when you just look at decent relievers. And if somebody's going to get released, they're going to be better off trading them. So somebody's going to get 1 or 2 of those guys probably once the rosters are announced.
But
I was like, be preemptive, go trade Barlow now, get a prospect and cut your losses. Why wait till midseason? You don't know. What if he gets hurt?
I actually put it out on Twitter. I know Robertson's going inside the top 200 right now in main events. I put it out on Twitter. Where do you take him? I said, I think he's the guy. I said, if he's the closer, where do you take him? People were telling me, I had one person say I'd take him above Bednar. So that'd be like 110 if you take him above Bednar. But if he is the closer, he's going to get more saves than Bednar. But because of the Pittsburgh versus Mets thing, but I think it's pretty risky to do that. I think it's pretty risky. But there's going to be some believers, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure someone will believe it more than me on Saturday. I don't mind taking one early, but if I do that, I'm going to let it drift. I'll come back in around round 16 or 17, and I'll try and get, Fulmer like we talked about, or some of the other guys I like. I'm not going to force myself into getting 2 closers early in my draft. There's too many other fires I got to put out.
If David Bednar got traded to the New York Mets, where would he rank among your closers?
He'll move up, but then again, next year, then he has no value. He's got a lot of team control left. That's why I don't really think the Mets are a great fit, because they're not going to bring Bednar in there and then Diaz comes back, whenever he's going to come back. I know they're saying best case scenario, it's an 8-month recovery. These guys are freak athletes, but you can't rush them at the same token. So I just don't know if the Mets are going to give up the prospect capital it takes to get Bednar, just because of, I think he's under team control till 27. That's a lot of time.
That's a huge asset. Maybe it's
26 or 27. That's why it just doesn't make sense for the Mets with the contract they gave Diaz to go give up one of your guys like Alvarez to go get Bednar. Of course, the Pirates really don't need a catcher, but I'm just spitballing people.
Let's talk about a team in the same division, the Philadelphia Phillies, who they have Craig Kimbrell, who anytime he's on a team, you have to think he's got to be one of the guys in line to be the front runner for saves. But Sir Anthony Dominguez might be the best reliever in that bullpen. Is it as simple as that Sir Anthony is the fireman and Kimber will be the ninth inning guy? Is there other players that are going to mix in here? Because the Phillies are going to expect it to be one of the best teams in baseball, which should give them plenty of save opportunities here. Who's the guy to roster if you're looking for saves out of this bullpen?
This will probably be another one I avoid. I like Sir Anthony a lot, but he's under the same connotation that we treated Evan Phillips. And, Kimbrel and, Alvarado was very good last year, which is why I don't understand why they got Gregory Soto. But then you look at all the stuff. Kimbrel's on a 1-year deal. They bought out the arbitration years from Sir Anthony and Alvarado. The only one under arbitration, Soto. So Soto's probably the least likely to get saves if you're looking at price depression on your salary. So those other three guys will probably share the saves. I just don't know if one of them is going to get enough. I would like to see Kimbrel's velocity tick up a little bit, but I also know veterans with a normal ramp up are not airing it out. They're not like Yohan Duran is coming out hitting 101. The older guys are like, I'll wait till next week.
Yeah. I don't know. This is a very interesting bullpen. I mean, is it crazy that you think there could be somebody from this bullpen that gets 20 saves?
I think that would be tough. If you're going on that, the only one that would probably do that would be Kimbrel if they let him. I just don't know if he has the skill set still capable of doing that.
That's fair. But yeah, I think avoiding it completely definitely could be the right way to go here. As well as this bullpen, which is to me the pineapple on pizza bullpen of baseball, because it is absolutely disgusting. And the Washington Nationals, Doc, this is your team right now. The way it's supposed to be Kyle Finnegan, who I think might be the worst closer in baseball. That actually is the closer. You have Carl Edwards Jr. there. You have Hunter Harvey there. They have Erasmo Ramirez. There is nobody here that I want. Tanner Rainey's still there, but he's starting the year on the IL. It's expected to be. The Nats are just disgusting. Doc, are you taking anybody in this bullpen in any of your drafts?
First of all, if it's not clear, I feel like I'm an Orioles fan now based on the amount of games I go to.
You literally have switched teams 3 separate times now.
How is it 3?
Eric used to be a Mets fan back in the day, and then they traded Jose Reyes, and David Wright was hurt all the time. So he said, now I'm going to be a Nats fan because I live in Washington. And now that you live in Baltimore, you're like, no, I'm an Orioles fan. And that's all
right. It's split fandom, 1A, 1B, like you and the Twins and Nats, right, David?
I'll always root for the Twins regardless.
Okay, well, I'll always root for the Nats regardless.
So if the Nats play the O's, you're rooting for the Nats then?
I hope both teams have fun.
No, that's all I needed to hear. Okay, go ahead.
So I do think Finnegan is the guy to begin the year as the closer. He had 11 saves last year and 11 the year before that. But this is a bullpen I'm not touching. The Nats are projected to have the least amount of wins in baseball. Most sports books have them at 58.5. And it's actually favored on the under. So with no clear cut, and if you're taking somebody, it's a late round pick. I would take Finnegan, but I wouldn't overdraft any of these guys because they're just not going to be a competitive team. And they play in a very competitive division. And I know they play less division games this year, but I just don't think that there's value in taking these guys.
All right, then let's go to the next one because we don't need to waste Greg's knowledge on the Washington Nationals bullpen. Unless Greg, there's something else in there. I'd rather your knowledge first, maybe some teams that might have more interesting situations here.
No, that's fine. And the only thing I can add to that is that they're another team that said there's once in a while. We already told Finnegan that we might need him in the 8th inning more than the 9th inning. So not only are you saying they're not going to win a lot of games, but he might give away save chances because he's facing the toughest pocket in the 8th inning at times, which makes it even more risky.
Yeah, good point with that too. So we're all staying away from the Nats bullpen. We got the Texas Rangers looking into the American League, and Jose Leclerc would be the guy that I thought was. It seemed his stuff is awesome, and I know he's been inconsistent finding the strike zone, but he was somebody that looks insanely nasty at times. Jonathan Hernandez is back, but always seems like he is the 8th inning guy. they have a couple other players in this bullpen. I know Frank Stample kind of brought this name up, and that's where I started thinking about it. Will Smith reunited with Bruce Bochy. Maybe Will Smith can work his way into the discussion there. For you, Greg, is it Jose Leclerc and you're not concerned, or is there more questions there?
Well, first I'm going to go yell at Frank because he's a subscriber. Anyways, I intimated that, there were some really interesting quotes when they signed Smith. Like they didn't bring back Matt Moore because they said he was too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought Smith in, who obviously has, since he was the closer for Bochy at the end of 2018 and 2019, before his trade to Atlanta. And he was like, we know what we're going to get with Will. He's a gamer and, he's not scared of the big situations and this, that, and the other. So I think Leclerc will open the year as the closer, but if his command issues resurface or he does have a habit of putting too much traffic on the bases at times. So if he gets a couple of blown saves early, I wouldn't be surprised that there's a quick hook and all of a sudden you're going to see Will Smith out there. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that there's going to be a very short leash on Jose Leclerc. I mean, they waited till the last day to pick up his option. They had a team option on him. The last possible hour that they could sign him and extend that option is when they signed it. It was like, if they were like, oh, Leclerc's our guy, we're just going to pick up that option right now. I mean, they literally were like watching the clock tick down and said, okay, we'll keep him.
Interesting. So
I mean, he has talent. I just don't know if he can manifest it over a full season.
So this will be another one of those situations that you're not really interested in.
At pick 180, it's hard for me to say I'm going to go get at pick 180. I'm doing too many other things. I'd rather, I'm looking at I know Springs has actually jumped up in the ADP, but that was a range where I used to get Jeffrey Springs and other people that was just, there's other parts of the draft that I like that I'm not going to be diving into a closer at that point.
Okay.
Can I put it into existence that I think Taylor Hearn gets a shot?
You can. I mean,
he has
stuff. I mean,
never was a good starter. Like always got bombed as a starter, but like for one inning, I feel like he could be the guy. I just want it to happen. I want him to have a good career.
It's a long season. Anything can happen.
Yeah. Then let's look at the next team here and going right down the list. We have the Seattle Mariners. We know the two guys here, Andres Munoz and Paul Sewald. Both could well be, if they were on separate teams, their own closer. We wouldn't even discuss this, but they're both on the same team. Is one to you, Greg? Is it just who you can get at the lower ADP at this point, or do you think one firmly sets themselves apart as the closer in Seattle?
This one's a bit of a conundrum because Andres Munoz is, we joked about Doug Dennis earlier, but if you look at the contract that Seattle got him to sign, it's criminal. I mean, they're paying him like $2 million a year. You know how good he is, what he would get on an open market. I mean, whatever. Again, if you need an agent, Andre, I'm right around here.
There you go.
Munoz is just uber talented, but same thing. When you saw in the playoffs, he was going against Vlad Guerrero. He was going against Bo Bichette. He was in those moments where they needed him the most. And then he takes out the hard stuff, and then Sewald will come in and get the save. And I think you're going to see that same MO. The only thing I'm going to say is I forgot to look before I came on air. I'm not sure if Sewald is a free agent at the end of the year, if he has one more arbitration year left. I'm not positive on that one. But let's not forget, this is a team that traded a very popular clubhouse guy. So if Sewald is in his, if he's a free agent at the end of the season, they've already proven that they'll trade. I mean, they traded Graveman to get other parts because that's just what their new MO is. If you're not under contract the next year, we'll move you. So, him, Diego, if their contracts are expiring, again, I'm not 100% positive on Sewald. I'm just saying that's something to keep in the back of your mind. And then I also like Matt Brash in this bullpen. That guy's filthy. I mean, his slider is unbelievable. Everyone forgets that in 2021, Drew Steckenrider led this team in saves. Drew Steckenrider. That's
true,
with Sewald there, and everybody wanted everybody else, and Steckenrider got the most saves in the second half. So the Seattle's another team that just rolls with the pockets, and you just have to go in with eyes wide open. I don't mind either one at their price, but I'm not going to force them either.
So Sewald had an arbitration this year. He's making 1 year, $4.1 million. He's an unrestricted free agent in 2025 is what it says.
So they have one more year, so they don't have to worry about trading him this year. So no, ignore that comment. But next year you can plan on him probably getting traded.
Yeah, with the amount of arms they have in that bullpen.
And you've got Bryce Miller waiting, Prelander, Baroa, Isaiah Campbell. I mean, they've got so many dominoes. If they decided that they wanted to enhance if they had to move a Sewald or somebody else to get something they need for a push at the Astros, they would not hesitate because they've got guys waiting in the wings.
Seattle's so stacked. They're like a team that's going to be around for a long time with the talent that they have. It's
them and the Orioles are going to be very, very good for the next few years.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch two teams that have not been good for a long time now making noise here. The next team we'll talk about, the Oakland A's, and talking about the Nats not winning very many games. This is probably a team they'll be fighting for last place with. Trevor May right now seems to be the guy, but there's Zach Jackson and Denny Jimenez there as other potential options here. You would think with the contract that they gave Trevor May that he'd be the guy. It's obviously a 1-year deal, so they could have his value go up and ship him. Is that the case here, Greg? Probably try to see if you can drive his value up and trade him.
You would think so, but we'll have to see how that plays out. He's like the highest paid player on that team by a lot.
I didn't realize that.
A lot. I think the next highest paid player is like $2 million a year. He's getting $7 million. So he wanted to pitch closer to where he grew up. I think that's kind of why he went there. He does have the games finished clauses in his contract. So yeah, there's motivation for him to want to close. Like we talked about with the Nets, Doc highlighted how many games they're going to win. And then is he going to be the guy, hopefully in the 9th inning? What if they use him like they might use Finnegan? If I'm getting him at like pick 350, okay. But again, it's just not another situation I'm cramming into my needs because there's probably other stuff that's more. I'd rather have an Andre Munoz type that's going to give me better strikeouts and ratios and less saves just because he'll help my lineup more in a 15-team league than Trevor May will.
Yeah, and Marty, you were, I think, one of the person, at least on this show, that was touting him the longest as someone you were trying to target for saves. And his ADP's gone up a lot since then.
Yeah, I mean, when the news first dropped, that's when I was the most in on him because you could still get him pretty cheap. But now that it's flown up, it's just I don't have him anywhere. Jimenez, he's gonna get 10 saves. I know that right now. They're gonna pitch him as much. And I think Trevor May somewhere around 10, 12, 15. And that's at the most, probably 10, and they ship him. Honestly, I'm saying just stay away from it. It's a mess, and it's how many games are they gonna win?
Doc's the one with the season long lines here. It's probably like 66.5 wins or something. I'm sure.
No, it's like 60.5. 66.5. 66.5. You get in that Rockies territory.
Gotcha. Doc, they did a bunch of fun season long props on the YouTube channel.
I could probably recite each team's range just from how much I've looked at them.
I still like the Rays bet that you guys brought up. There was one obscure bet, the Rays, the first team to 10 wins, because they play the first series was against
great schedule.
They play like the Oakland A's, then they play the
the Red Sox, I think, in Tampa. I don't know. It's while you continue, I'll look that up.
Yeah, because that's for those listening that hadn't heard that one. That's a good bet.
That's why I've been trying to get like Springs and Eflin late, just because that opening of the year, you can get a couple of good starts.
Oh yeah. While Doc's looking that up, we'll go to our next bullpen. We'll stay in the same division, the Los Angeles Angels, who recently have had some interesting names pop up here. Carlos Estevez was the guy a few months ago. Everybody's like, Carlos Estevez, that's the role they brought him in for. All of a sudden, Jimmy Herget's looking great, and Matt Moore is just a freaking shutdown reliever now. Maybe Matt Moore is used for more than just the ninth. But Jimmy Herget is again the name, and then obviously his name just
The
popped
gift
out of my head.
machine, Ben Joyce.
Ben Joyce.
Yes, Ben Joyce. Thank you.
104 miles an hour. Ooh.
He's making 105. You got to put respect on his name.
Machi.
Who is it in this bullpen? But it's in a good way. I feel like there's a lot of exciting options here, Greg.
Yeah, well, we all know what excitement gets us in a draft room. So
yeah.
It's funny. I liked Estevez, and then he had 10 walks, and I was like, oh my good God. And then now he's starting to come around again. I do like Joyce. I had a good conversation with Jeff Pontus at Baseball America, and I brought this up to him. I was like, Joyce had one back-to-back appearance with Tennessee, one. And he did not do it at all in double. I mean, he only had 13 AA appearances, but none were on consecutive days.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if he, with how much effort he puts into his pitches and hitting 104, 105 miles per hour, if he can handle the workload of what we would want a closer to do, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I really think he needs a little time in the minors just to try and establish that he can do that and it's repeatable. And then you would bring, and he does have some command issues as well. It's not like he's a perfect prospect. So I think they'll use Estevez until they can't. And then if he forces their hand, then they'll go to Herget and Moore sharing it. And then they'll try and bring up Joyce maybe May or June.
And then Joyce would be the guy you think at that point?
Well, if you bring him up, you're going to introduce him in like the 6th, 7th inning.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he's showing he can handle it, then you move him up to the 8th, and then you'll give him his first save chance and kind of, you don't want to put too much on him too soon, because then you can you don't want to wreck anyone's mentality.
Right.
I think you got to build the confidence. You can't just say, hey, you're going to be our closer. It's too much. Just like Hinch is trying to protect Lang. It's the same idea.
Okay. No, I agree with that. That's
Do you guys want to hear the Rays schedule?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
They begin a 3-game homestand versus the Tigers. Marty, I'm surprised you didn't call me.
That's what it was. Okay.
And they play at Nationals for a 3-game homestand. Then versus the Athletics for a 3-game homestand, and then versus the Red Sox for a 4-game homestand. That is as juicy an opening schedule as I've ever seen.
That's a nice 13-game start.
That's probably like a 10-3, I'm sure, record.
I hope so.
All said and done.
With their pitching, yeah, that's definitely possible.
We got 3 teams left, all in the same divisions.
Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
To add about Estevez.
Yeah, go
ahead. Has been working. They're trying to get him to throw fastballs up in the zone,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the reasons why his spring has been very tough.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to introduce that, and if it doesn't work, they'll just scrap it, and he'll go back to how he was pitching.
How about having him throw more sliders? It's his best pitch, but yeah, I digress. Yeah, he should be spinning sliders, not worrying about trying to throw elevated fastballs. But again, what do I know?
It's the Angels, Greg. I mean, come on, you're expecting too much.
And that's why I don't want him to rush Joyce. I mean, oh my God, don't ruin the kid.
Isn't this funny? There's certain teams that you're just when they get players, you're just really concerned because of how they've developed. Like the Nats with their pitching has always been really bad. The Angels never seem to develop pitchers consistently. I feel like the Royals never seem to develop any good starters.
Well, at least they have a new staff. I think the Royals will start to improve, but it's going to be hard for them to fix what's there. It's going to be, I think what they bring in will help shape where they're going.
Hopefully. The Royals are an exciting team. I want them to have better pitching.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of the Royals, let's talk about them. They right now, you talked about it, Greg, that they have so many riches there. Scott Barlow, Dylan Coleman, Aroldis Chapman. I mean,
Stomont,
Taylor Clark, Amir Garrett. But Aroldis Chapman probably came to Kansas City for one thing, and that's to close. Is it that simple, or do you think he doesn't get the job right away?
I don't think they would just hand it over to him. At best, he's sharing it with Barlow, especially if they take the pocket approach. I just, maybe I'm biased because I just have too many. I had him on my team in 2021 and it was a complete roller coaster ride. So I was like, 2022, I'm out, and thank God, because people are taking him inside of pick 75. And I was like, avoid. So I'll victory lap that one because it's past the season. But yeah, I just the command issues, and he's a volatile person. I just don't know. Now here's the thing: he's not much of a poker player. So like when the other day he had a good outing, and he does that, after a pitch, and he does this little like standing strut after a strikeout. When he's feeling it, it. But then there's other starts where he's just got or other outings, the sweat's just pouring down. He doesn't know where a pitch is going, and then it just falls apart. So about 5 pitches in, you usually have an idea of which direction his outing is going to go. I just don't trust him enough. And again, he signed I think he took a $4 million deal. I mean, I'm sure they said, hey, we'll give you some save opportunities, but I doubt he will get full run unless they trade Barlow. That's the only caveat to any of this.
For reference, the 10 main event drafts that have gone, Scott Barlow has gone pick 131 and Aroldis Chapman down. Yeah, and hitting Aroldis Chapman's 345. So a very big difference where I think people think most of the saves are coming from there with that. The Minnesota Twins, my favorite team, is also very quick because there's no doubt who the most talented pitcher is. It's Yohan Duran. But Jorge Lopez is interesting because I was reading an article that talked about not only did he have stuff in his personal life going on, but he changed the way he was throwing pitches in 2-strike counts with the Twins. And that was something that was actually detrimental to his overall numbers. And they say he's going to go back to throwing in 2-strike counts like how he was with the Orioles. And he was obviously showed he was a very talented reliever with them. And with the threat of Duran becoming too expensive, they could definitely suppress his saves. Is it, again, one of those situations, just as much as we seem like it's laid out there, like Duran, maybe he gets you 10 to 15 saves, but the Twins are going to look every option possible for him not to be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Rogers said as much when they traded him. He was like, I wanted to be the closer, and they don't believe in it because they don't want to pay arbitration money. I mean, he literally said it. It's not like somebody was like speculating, like, oh, maybe. I mean, Rogers was very outspoken when he arrived in San Diego about how Minnesota handled him. And yes, I mean, I love Duran. I mean, I was highlighting him in the Athletic early on last year and beating the drum for him. But, as much as we want him to be the closer, it doesn't mean that doesn't fit the Twins' MO. And you highlighted all the reasons why. And when we were at first pitch, one of the scouts there, I was able to get a conversation with him, and he said the Twins, the Twin scouts believe that Lopez will be, the primary save share because, they traded 4 prospects for him to get him in there so they can keep Duran in that HLR role. I just, I know we want him to be the closer. And again, Duran can make a liar out of me and get 20 saves this year. And I'm happy to be wrong because I love the kid. I just feel like the Twins are going to use Lopez as much as they can in the 9th inning and use Duran in those highest leverage moments.
It is interesting. I do want to bring up another name here, and that's Griffin Jacks. And he's been kind of the guy that I've been touting for this bullpen, who I think could be a sneaky save source. Again, if something happens with Lopez.
Yep. If Lopez crumbles or they trade him. Yep. There's a window of opportunity for Jacks, no doubt. Him and Thielbar are actually very good relievers. Just not a lot of people know about it.
And I think with Griffin Jacks, it's interesting too, because he went to Driveline, which is obviously the new buzzword, but his fastball velocity is up a couple ticks, and he already had an incredible slider. And you have a good fastball and a good slider as a closer with already pretty good strikeout stuff. It's I feel like he'd be the guy to step in there to become the closer. And I feel like you can get him after picks like 600. So I kind of been trying to take him in every DC 50 I've done just as a speculative save ad there.
Yep. Yeah, you can do a lot worse at those points. No, there's no doubt he could do it. There was a couple of snippets last year where he was just unbelievable. And that was his first year as a reliever. Just he's got to get a little bit more consistent. But yes, with the added velocity, and if he can work his slider off of that fastball with better command, I think that would open up another door to his level of production.
Yeah, and just to put those exact numbers, he was averaging 95.4 miles per hour with this fastball in 2022. He touched 99.8 at Driveline. Obviously, I don't expect it to be that high. Maybe he'll settle around like 97.
Yeah, well, they get to do like those momentum runs before they throw
exactly.
It, so yeah.
And last year threw his slider 48% of the time and had a 194 expected batting average and 36% whiff rate. So a deep name to keep in mind there if you're looking for saves. The last team, the Chicago White Sox and Kendall Graveman, Aaron Bummer, Ronaldo Lopez became the buzzy name because of what he can do in short innings. Obviously, he can throw hard. And he had, he once a failed starter, but looks like he has the makeup of what it could be an elite reliever here. And like you said, they don't want to appoint the closer maybe out of respect to Liam Hendricks, but this is a team that's expected to win a lot of games here, and there will be saves to be had, but who is going to take the majority of them?
I projected Lopez for 13 and Graveman, I think, for 7, with Kelly getting a couple, Bummer getting a couple, and Crochet grabbing a couple of like 2-inning saves when he comes back in May. Graveman's second half last year, he had a whip over 1.5. That just makes me nervous. I don't think Graveman's what we thought he was. And I know people are like, oh, it's Graveman because he did it last year when Hendricks was on the IL, but that was when Lopez was transitioning into the bullpen. Ethan Katz has said more than once, the pitching coach, that Lopez has closer stuff. And Pedro Grifol, the new manager, is already the article 2 days ago in the Chicago paper. He was saying, we're going to use the pockets approach. So we're going by matchups, pockets of the lineup, and guys will get saves and they'll know their role before the game starts. So just plan on it. But again, if Lopez is doing much better than Graveman at the beginning of the year, then that's where you can say, okay, he might be able to get the primary save share. And if you look at their ADPs, they're going in 2 different directions, especially in the main events. I think the first time that Lopez has pushed ahead of Graveman in ADP when you look at OCs versus DCs versus the mains.
Yeah, in main events, Ronaldo's right now picking 298, and Graveman's going at 321. But just, I guess it also depends on the leagues you look at here. In the just all drafts together here, just combining the ADPs, Graveman is still ahead of Lopez, but not by much. It's definitely the gap is closing, like you said. It's 2 different directions, and I guess you obviously it'd be hard to grab both of them and spend the type of draft capital to get both. But I think, like you touched on, the stuff that Lopez has, maybe it doesn't translate to a bunch of more saves than Graveman, but I think the upside's definitely more tantalizing with him.
Yeah, it was weird. In the second half, he had a 0.81 whip, but his K-BB and his swing strike rate went down. But he was another guy who went to drive line because they were saying at the end of the year, his slider was moving more like a cutter, so it became more hittable, which is why his swinging strike rates went down. So he was trying to reform and get that a little more bite to his slider to get more whiffs this season. We'll see if that can translate. We don't know, but again, he had the better whip. He had the better ancillary and the results with his stuff. So that's why I lean towards, when it comes down to A or B, I'm going to lean towards the better stuff.
I'm with you there. But on that note, we got through 15 of the most hair-tearing bullpens in baseball, and I think everybody that was listening or watching has a good idea of maybe where you want to go in drafts with these bullpens or avoid them completely. But now I think we all, as we kind of get into the peak of draft season over this next week, we know where we want to go for our saves. Greg, I want to ask you this last question before we get out of here. How long before saves and holds becomes the norm for fantasy baseball leagues?
Well, I go down to the Tower. This was the first time Towers was in person since I've been involved with it since 2021. There was a lot of dinosaurs. I don't know. It's unless somebody like the NFBC goes to it, I don't think you'll see. It's hard. It's not as easy as people think, because there was less people to get 30 holds last year than there was 30 saves. I think only 2 people got 30 holds. Minter, and the other one's escaping my brain right now. It might have been Boxy, but I think he had 29. But anyways, it was it's holds are goofy. They're not as like easy to get as we think they are. Now solds do help things, because now in a solds format, I don't have to worry about what Munoz's role or Duran's role or Phillips' role is, all of a sudden now they're top 10 relievers because I don't have to worry about what they're doing. If they're getting a save or a hold, I don't care. I'm getting great ratios. I'm getting strikeouts, and I'm getting a very good pitcher. So for those kinds of relievers, I think it's fantastic. I just don't know if the industry is open enough yet to have that sort of a thing take over. Although I did tease Frank because I lost to him in the championship last year in Tout Wars head-to-head. I was like, if I pulled that off, I was going to try and get a format that did do solds, because whoever wins the Tout head-to-head gets to choose the format the next year.
I like that. You should convince Frank that should be the change.
Well, we use the CBS standard scoring.
I see.
He's a company guy.
Yeah.
I see.
And he's a terrific person. I've known Frank since like 2017. He's a great guy. I just like to tease him. I was like, I was going to go all crazy with like all these different things. If I had won, I wanted to make Ariel Cohen really have to focus. Get him out of his comfort zone. Ariel, we're doing souls, we're doing K- BB percentage. He was gonna be like, what? So it would have been fun.
I love that. I do hope Solds becomes it, because then you get the best relievers on your team. And at that point, I think you try to get the best starters on your team for starting pitchers.
Yeah, I'd rather go to Souls than having like a team kicker as being the team bullpen. I don't want to get to that sort of a thing. That's just ridiculous. But no. And on Recon we do that. Like I said, the spreadsheet I made for our subscribers, there's a tab for saves, there's a tab for solds, and then there's a tab for the CBS point standard scoring. I mean, whatever one you're in, you can just click the tab, and I've got my projections of saves and holds mixed in with the aggregated projections, just to give you an idea, because sometimes some of those projection systems are cookie cutter. I went through how many holds per save happened with teams last year and tried to use that as a basis when I was putting those numbers to the paper.
And if I was interested as a listener to find out more about Reliever Recon, where can I go?
If you just search Reliever Recon and Patreon, it should come right up. It's your first day, we do a charge of $5, and then it's $5 the first of the month from that point forward. I feel bad doing it because like some people are signing up today and they're going to get dinged again on April 1st. However, on every article I put other stuff so you can read what's been posted already with the player profiles we've done and all of the stuff that I've done with I have a main event primer, an OC primer, a DC primer. It's like whatever you're doing, you can go just click the article and read what we had done for that. And, Spore and Mason have spoken about us on Sleeper in the Bus multiple occasions. There's a lot of industry people, and there's a lot of the top two finishers in the main event last year are both subscribers. So
that's awesome.
Thank you, Big Money Bob. Thank you, Steve Weimer's been with us since we started. Rob DiPietro has been a terrific supporter with everything we do, and now he's got his own. So I mean, yeah, it's Frank Stanfield's in there, Ariel's a member, Spore, Justin Mason. I mean, I remember one person when they first joined, they're like, "Man, I went onto the spreadsheets the other day and I saw like Spore and somebody else was on there. Like, that's really cool." I'm like, well. But we work hard. I mean, the $5 a month, you get your bang for your buck. I mean, we have a post every day. My closer charts update in real time. I've already got the spring training games that finished today. I've got them all recapped with strike percentage, swing strike rates for the relievers when StatCast data is available. And I just, I work hard. Probably too hard if you ask my girlfriend.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of prep periods at work too. That's where that goes in. I'm sure
that's
too, right?
Well, yeah, and she teaches first grade. I said if I did not teach phys ed, there's no way this could be my side gig. Yeah. And it's nothing against physical education. I love my job, but yeah, if I had to be planning what my kids had to read and do math and all that, my eighth graders are just got done playing team handball. So I mean, we just get in there and get after it. It's just a different animal.
It really is. I can speak to that. Again, one of the few people I know in the whole fantasy sports space that's a phys ed teacher as well. So
and you know what I like about phys ed? I'm not going to get off topic here, but I can have 5 classes in the same day and they're all 8th graders, and all of my classes have different skills levels, different personalities. It's like I'm doing handball 5 times, but every class is different because this class is crazy. This class is kind of reserved. This class has no athletic ability at all. So it's just like there's different little moments that you're doing within those groups that make it fun.
It's awesome. No, I completely agree with you. Different skill levels, and then there's always the kids that want to challenge you too, and like if you every once in a while step in there.
Yeah, they try and come at me in badminton, but that doesn't go well. Even at 53, I can still take them out.
Are you a good badminton player?
Yeah, I'm all right.
We might have to go head to head one of these days.
Again, 53. But anyways, yeah, I don't know if you guys remember years and years ago, but Greg Paulus went to my high school. He was the point guard at Duke.
Yeah.
So his senior year, he came to my office. I wasn't teaching him. He's like, all right, Mr. Jewett, it's time. So we were playing. I got up early on the first set. So he's like, all right, you win the first set. So then he won the second set. So I'm like, well, we got to play a third set. So we go to the third set. It was 14-14. He missed the serve, and I got the next 2 points and beat him. So, you know, I was younger. I'd be like, hey, we're at the bar. I'm like, see that guy on TV? I said, I beat him in badminton.
I love that.
So like 5 years later, he was coming in doing something. And he was like, Mr. Jewett, he goes, am I still the hardest game you ever had? I was like, yes. He goes, that's good enough for me. He was just a competitor. He was a great kid. But, yeah.
Oh man.
Quarterback on Syracuse too. Shout out.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that.
It was so when he was at our school, it was bananas. Every day there'd be a different school, you know. One day I remember I got to stand in the hallway with Jay Wright so he could watch him shoot baskets because Jay Wright wasn't allowed to talk to him because he was a sophomore. So I'm just sitting there talking with Jay Wright from Villanova, and we're just having a conversation, and he's just watching Greg shoot baskets, so he knows he's in the building. He stood there for like 15 minutes, and then he left. He flew to Syracuse to watch him shoot baskets. Recruiting to me just blows my mind.
That is insane. Is he coaching now, right? He's coaching somewhere?
I think he's still – oh, he was coaching at Niagara.
Okay, yeah, I remember he was an assistant at Duke for a little bit, I'm pretty sure, and then I knew he went somewhere else.
Yeah, he was bouncing around, but yeah, he got the...
We went from closers to talking about Greg Paulus.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I know. People are like, all right, they've already logged off now.
It's a great way to end the show. Greg, anything else you would like to promote where people can find you on Twitter, your work for The Athletic, everything else too?
Yeah, in season, The Athletic last year, they had my articles on Tuesdays, which was just awful because like every Monday, 5 guys would go on the IL and I was doing 18 rewrites. But usually Tuesdays, I got to confirm that with Nando. And then Reliever Recon, I have stuff up every day. And then at GJEWETT9 on the old Twitter machine. And, you know, where I do my best to answer what I can. But, you know, like I said,
pay the man.
We had that conversation before too. Yeah, like
we did.
If you ever came on there, you'll be like, all right, this is the easiest $5 I can spend a month. I mean, you go to Dunkin' Donuts, you get a coffee. It's what, $6?
Or like me,
or you can get 30 days of information that just lands in your mailbox for the same price.
Yeah, it's again, if you think of a fantasy baseball Patreon, that's the golden standard is Reliever Recon. Make sure you guys go check out Reliever Recon. And check out all Greg's awesome work. He spends a lot of time with his craft and has a great team there. So get a leg up on your leagues and join Reliever Recon. As far as for us, Triple Play, we've got our MySpace Top 8, our My Guys episode next week, and we're going to talk about our lottery ticket lab. We all put a lottery ticket on Twitter that we're going to talk about. So you guys we'll hear that next week. And then we'll be at our in-season shows the week after that. So a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipe here. But for Greg, for Doc, for Little Cheesecake, for Marty Party, I'm D. Mendy. We're going to make like a bread truck and we're going to haul these buns. Catch you guys next week.